when I moved to Gard, Professor of Hebrew, Bible and Old Testament at the Norwegian MF School of Theology in Oslo. Yes, that was a very short one.
There you go. Okay. So first of all, thank you to Tova and Shalom for organizing this nice conference. And when I got the invitation last spring, I was happy, a little bit flattered, but also the topic for the conference, Temple Life in the Persian period, gave me the impetus to pursue an idea I have been pregnant with for some while. And a preliminary result is what I'm preparing today. And for technical reasons, I prefer to share with you the preliminary manuscript. It's very long, and I will obviously not be able to present everything. So a technical note, I will only present what is not highlighted, that's what is not yellow. Okay, so research questions and hypotheses. This paper focuses on limitations of alphabetic acrostics. It explores the literary device's resistance to later changes. The paper examines the hypothesis that one can use the metaphor of a time capsule to characterize an alphabetic acrostic pattern. From this, the article investigates the implications of understanding alphabetic acrostics as time capsules resistant to later changes to comprehend limitations of alphabetic acrostic poems. The research questions are: to what extent were acrostic poems like those in Lamentations 1 through 4 immune to later interpolations? And I will skip number 2 and 3. Number 4, what ideas do Lamentations acrostic poems attest to, particularly given their memories of Solomon's temple? I suggest that Lamentations acrostic form offers scholarship a new approach, a gateway to the world of ideas of the biblical poets. The alphabetic acrostics' preserving effect on the poem's contents makes it possible to use the acrostic poems as sources to how the poets saw their world in a hitherto unexplored way. Yeah, okay, this one. The term acrostic refers to a literary device with a primarily clear graphical component and less clear purpose. An acrostic surfaces when the initial letters of its line, couplets or stanzas, when read successively, spell a name, sentence, or alphabetic pattern. The existence of alphabetic acrostics is not questioned. An alphabetic acrostic displays the Hebrew alphabet when reading the initial letters of successive strophes. And if you have the manuscript, I will now jump to page 11. So, alphabetic acrostics were allergic to later changes. Alterations to an alphabetic acrostic pattern are visible regardless of whether they are unintended or intended. At any rate, the acrostic poem's alphabetic structure gave and continues to provide the poem a congenital immune system against secondary changes. The pattern made the poem, if not immune, then at least allergic to secondary changes. Any later changes to an already established acrostic pattern would probably do one or two things. A secondary change would either adapt to the existing pattern or leave a scar in the acrostic form. And now I will jump to page 17. And I will skip a few slides here. Research question 4. What ideas do Lamentations acrostic poems attest to? Lamentations is a source that reveals how the poets pictured their situation, its causes and the possible outcomes. In this section, the question is, what ideas and concepts do the poems, particularly acrostic ones, reflect? A sample of ideas that Lamentations 1 through 4 suggest were in circulation during and after Judah's Babylonian crisis. Negated and reversed Zion theology. The acrostic poems attest to a variant of Zion theology in their poets' world of ideas. The term is a loose umbrella term, a magnet that attracts closely related theological ideas and concepts. Zion theology focuses on Mount Zion and the temple in Jerusalem, which serve as the geographical and conceptual center for Yahweh's kingship and protection of his people. An aspect of the concept of Yahweh's presence is the concept of Yahweh's presence in Zion. Lamentations acrostic poems attest to a negative Zion theology. According to Lamentations 2, Yahweh was still available for daughter Zion. However, this was in the form of a destructive and violent presence. He had made a 180-degree turnaround. Instead of protecting her against her enemies, Yahweh assaulted her. Also, Lamentations 4 reversed the Zion theology. The poem told in Lamentations 4:11 that Yahweh, quote, kindled a fire in Zion that consumed its foundations, unquote. Daughter Zion's city god caused an architectonic and theological damnatio memoriae, that is, an erasure of her foundations. Lamentations acrostic poems document that Zion theology concepts existed during and shortly after the Babylonian crisis, even if they materialized in a negative and reversed way. The acrostic poems inverted the Judean ideas and concept about Yahweh as the deity dwelling in and protecting Zion. The acrostic poems are indicative of a date of origin of Zion theology that predated the Babylonian crisis. And again, I will move to, I think, page 26. The acrostic poems Memories of Solomon's Temple. Which memories of Jerusalem's pre-586 BCE temple do Lamentations poems contain? Temple-related tangibles. As for temple-related tangibles, Lamentations 2 has most of the references. In Lamentations 1, the only specific memory of the temple is in verse 10. Quote, an enemy stretched out his hand over all her treasures. Indeed, she saw the nations enter her sanctuary, about whom you commanded, they must not enter your congregation. Unquote. The verse reflects a sacrilege of Zion's sanctuary regarding the architecture of the edifice in question. The following line suggests that it had a temenos of some sort. Lamentations 2 has more temple-related references than Lamentations 1. Verse 6 laments that Yahweh broke down like a garden his booth, he destroyed his appointed place. Moreover, verse 7 utters that he rejected his altar, he repudiated his sanctuary. What are the implications of the second poem's memories? First, the memories refer to a single holy place, not multiple locations, even though it is referred through different names, different names. Second, the several overlapping terms used for the only holy place suggest that the second poem's author associated it with in part a tent and in part a permanent construction. Third, page 29. Third, the second poem's memories associated the temple with a dwelling place and sacrifices. The two parallel utterances in verse 7's first line identify Yahweh's altar and his sanctuary. Additionally, Lamentations 2 likely contains yet another memory of the temple in verse 1. According to verse 1, Yahweh, quote, threw down from heaven to earth Israel's splendor, Tiperet, unquote, and did not, quote, remember his footstool, unquote, in the day of his anger. There are uncertainties regarding the identity of the splendor and the footstool. When one reads Lamentations 2 as embedded in and reversing the conceptual universe of science theology, it is possible that footstool encompasses the idea of Yahweh's throne. The footstool was part of Yahweh's throne furniture. In Lamentations 2:1, Yahweh's footstool presupposed that Yahweh was enthroned in or on Zion as her king. Temple-related festivals and institutions. As for festivals and institutions, the reference distribution partly overlaps with temple-related tangibles. Most are found in Lamentations 2, and none are in the three last poems. Lamentations 1 hint at a pilgrimage to Zion, according to verse 4. Quote, Zion's roads are in mourning for the want of travelers to the appointed festival, unquote. The verse combined references to two extreme rites, mourning of the dead and pilgrimage to a festival. Somewhat more references are found in Lamentations 2. The second poem is the darkest of the already dark poems of Lamentations. The poem laments Yahweh's destruction of daughter Zion, buildings and institutions. In verse 6, the poet also described how Yahweh made forgotten in Zion appointed festival and Shabbat. Here, Yahweh's destructive actions against Zion came in the form of his causing to be forgotten. To forget, in the factitive or resultative PL stem, was not the result of a cognitive glitch, but an intended and active undertaking. Verse 6 is sandwiched between the mention of Yahweh's destruction of the temple and verse 7's rejection of his altar and sanctuary. Moreover, verse 6 hints at his burning of king and priest. Therefore, whatever identity, appointed festival and Shabbat have here, the poem associates them with the temple. Temple-related offices. As for Lamentations' memories of temple-related offices, the priests, especially the priests, there are some potentially important ones in the second and the fourth poems. The priest's association with the city and its temple is evident in Lamentations 2. In verse 2, immediately after the lament over Yahweh's destruction of his temple and his abandonment of festivals and Shabbat in Zion, the lament continue, quote, and he spurned king and priest, unquote. Daughter Zion takes the word in verse 20, quote, should priest and prophet be killed in Adonai's sanctuary, unquote. The mention of priest and prophet comes in a rhetorical question that expects the answer no. The normal thing would be that priest and prophet served in the sanctuary and should not defile it through their corpses. As for the phrase priest and prophet in Lamentations 2:20, the verse suggests that the poet saw a connection between the named religious specialists because he mentioned them together. Moreover, the verse indicates that the poet perceived a connection between the temple on the one hand and the pair, priest and prophet, on the other. Verse 20 is an additional indication of the existence of cult prophets whose workspace was the temple. Moreover, Lamentations 2:9 offers a glimpse of the poet's understanding of the cult prophet's professional modus operandi, as well as of that of the king and the princess. Quote, her king and princes are among the nations. Instruction is no more. Even her prophets did not find any vision from Yahweh. Unquote. Verse 9 betrays that the poet understood visions from Yahweh as the prophet's working tool. Also, verse 14 shows that the poet understood receiving and disseminating visions to be a prophetic task. As far as Lamentations 4 is concerned, it reflects the poet's conceptions of the prophets and priests. In verse 13, he related that the enemy's breach of Jerusalem's gate to, quote, the sins of her prophets and the iniquities of her priests, unquote. The second line supplements the phrase her priests with a participle construction, quote, those who poured out in her midst the blood of the righteous ones, unquote. The poet activated sacrificial terminology through the combination of to pour out and blood. Many of the Pentateuch's sacrifice texts prescribe that the priest shall pour out the blood of the sacrificed animal on the base, yasod, of the altar. In Lamentations 4:13, the result was a turning upside down, regardless of the kind of offer the poet activated. Yes, the priests poured out blood. No, they did not use appropriate sacrificial material. And no, the priests did not pour the blood on the base of the altar. Instead, in the fourth poem, the poet referred to Zion's bases, or better, foundations. Yedotah. Additionally, verses 14 through 15 in the fourth poem play on the purity regulations associated with Zion's priests. Quote, they wandered blindly through the streets. They became defiled with blood, so that no one was able to touch their garments. Turn away! Unclean! People shouted at them. Turn away! Turn away! Touch not! Unquote. In verses 14 to 15, the poet reversed the priest's role as guardians of purity. The purity regulations were turned against them. Summary and outlook. Lamentations as time capsules. This paper has explored the idea that the literary device alphabetic acrostics preserves the poetry in which it is used concerning both its form and content. The first main section discussed the extent to which acrostic poems, like Lamentations 1-4, were immune to later changes. Emphasis has been on the memories of Jerusalem pre-586 temple. What memories of Solomon's temple are reflected in Lamentations then? Well, the acrostic poems in Lamentations 1-4 and the semi-acrostic poem in Lamentations 5 suggest that after Jerusalem's Babylonian crisis, the poets behind the poems assumed that a temple had recently existed in Jerusalem. Moreover, the poets assumed this temple originally had an altar. Furthermore, they presumed the temple had some role in religious pilgrimage. They also presupposed that cult specialists such as priests and prophets participated in its activities. Additionally, the poets sometimes mentioned the temple cult specialists alongside the king, princes, and elders. Therefore, whatever social structure the poet assumed existed when the temple was in operation, the cult specialist belonged to the upper echelon of society. In the eyes of Lamentations authors, the priests were responsible for the temple's sacrifices and were even subject to specific ideas about ritual cleanness. Finally, my proposal in this article, or this paper as of now, is that Lamentations' alphabetic acrostic poems preserve their contents, allowing the poems to share characteristics with time capsules. My attempts at exegesis, that is to lead out of, are in this context a secondary byproduct. The details can be discussed on a case-by-case basis. Acrostic poems like those in Lamentations were supplied with a literary form that conserved the contents from the outset. Larger changes in the form and contents in periods after the composition are, if not impossible, at least probably easily identifiable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, notes, disagreements? Everybody agrees with you.
Okay.
Well, no.
Somebody must.
Well, yes, somebody must. And wants to, of course. So could you say something about Sitz im Leben?
Sitz im Leben. The short answer, I don't know.
So you cannot say anything about it.
No. Yeah. So I approach lamentations first and foremost as literature. Perhaps it was used in some... Later it was obviously used, but when it started being used as part of a kind of liturgy or commemorating the fall of the temple, there are several theories, but I don't consider that relevant for my main hypothesis in this paper, at least.
So, for instance, laments being used in reconstruction of temple. It's one of the liturgical uses of laments. That we know of.
Yeah. I don't know. I was not there. My main idea is rather that the form as such has a conservative effect on the contents, and that in this, as a result, we can use lamentations with caution, of course, as a source that is perhaps close to the catastrophe, the crisis. Yeah.
James, do you want to hear? Just say hi. I thought you raised your hand. You don't have to.
He does.
Thanks, Gard. Maybe since you're talking about form so much, have you looked for some sort of historical control? Like, are there maybe organizations of these themes along the known patterns in which the alphabet was learned, like the Abgada groupings and its subgroupings?
Again, if to be honest, the short answer is no. I have not asked myself that question. No, I observe, and others have done that obviously before me. That you have two variants of the alphabets going on in this.
I mean, I asked, but I've never seen anyone talk about how scribes taught and learned the alphabet in relation to these.
Yeah.
And it works, I know, for like the Nahum text. So
Yeah.
No?
Thank you very much. It's a question, I guess, on the premise that the acrostics are immune, or relatively immune. So if they are more stable, let's say textually, how do you treat the cases in which acrostics were clearly corrupted, like Nahum, like the missing letters here and there in the Psalm, in the acrostic Psalms, etc.
Well, I partly treat those questions in the sections that I skipped orally. To be honest, I do not go deeply into Nahum, which is very corrupt, probably. I think the best example is it? Oh, I don't remember. My memory is not that good. But Psalm 145, the Nun strophe there, I think it is, which is not in the Masoretic text, but it is found in the Qumran scroll. So that would be the last case. At least would be perhaps an indication that my hypothesis has something to it. That. It is possible to detect at least when something is taken out. The other way, is it possible that somebody at one point in the reception history has added something to an acrostic poem, partly acrostic poem? I cannot exclude that, but I consider it unlikely. Then one needs a conspiracy theory in order to make sense of it, I think.
Yeah, but the replacement is relatively easy.
Yeah.
As long as you start with the right letter.
Yeah, okay. Again, then you probably need very good reason to replace it. And in the case of limitations, I don't think there are many. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry.